Peace, friends of refined investments. Today we're going to talk about the biggest criticism when it comes to XRP. A lot of people are talking about this. Namely, the question, does XRP really have extremely bad tokenomics? Could Ripple, at least in theory, just sell everything overnight? Why do some investors see this as a huge problem? And why do I think that many people completely misunderstand the actual purpose of XRP? We'll also take a look at why the future of cryptocurrencies will probably look very different from what many, for example, Bitcoin maximalists believe. Because when we talk about tokenization, digital assets, and global liquidity, XRP suddenly becomes extremely interesting. Before we get started, of course, feel free to check out the Crypto Campus. It's now live. As I said, my Crypto Campus, you can do all sorts of things on it. As I mentioned, you have the Crypto Radar on there where you can browse through, get an analysis every morning, receive all the price data, etc. And of course, you can also track your portfolio and so on. If you want to look up any crypto terms, there's a dedicated page for that as well, where everything is explained simply and in detail. Plus, there are also various products available, whether it's portfolio analyses or different courses, etc. So feel free to take a look. Especially the portfolio analyses are, in my opinion, very affordable. And yeah, there have definitely been some people who have sold the same thing for 5 to 10 times the price. But that's not what we're talking about today. In any case, feel free to check it out. As I said, it's live and yeah, in color. So definitely take a look. I'd really appreciate it, even if the XRP chart isn't looking too great at the moment. The last all-time high was in 2018, but we're staying strong, we're sticking with it. But I'd say, let's continue with the video. And of course, please give the video a thumbs up in advance. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I'd be happy with that. But let's start with an accusation we've been hearing for years. First of all, Ripple holds too much XRP. Ripple can sell everything at any time, and for exactly these reasons, Ripple is extremely dangerous. So just be careful there, okay? That's one of those standard phrases we've been hearing over and over again for years. But this is exactly where, for many people, the analysis just stops. Because, I mean, the real question is it even technically possible? And that's where, in my opinion, it gets really interesting because, I mean, a large portion of the XRP holdings are in various escrow structures. That essentially means the coins can't just be dumped onto the market overnight at the push of a button. That's simply not technically possible. There are very specific and well-defined release mechanisms for this, clear schedules as well, and clear limitations, which is extremely important. And this exact point is just very often completely ignored when you hear these discussions, which makes me wonder, hey, don't you guys have the internet? So that's something you can find out in 1, 2, or at most 15 minutes of Googling, and you'll get all the information you need. It's not a secret or anything, but it's often just brushed aside, especially by Bitcoin maxis, because some of them are a bit more radical. I mean, you probably know what I mean, right? You can hardly have a normal conversation with them without being attacked right away, and they act as if you just insulted or hit their child. I really don't understand that at all. I mean, of course, XRP gradually come onto the market over time, bit by bit, but that's something completely different from the idea of a sudden total dump or anything like that. But now there's also a second important point. I mean, even if Ripple owns large amounts of XRP, why would Ripple want to completely destroy its own market? I mean, that's a question you really have to ask yourself. Economically, it just makes absolutely zero sense. Ripple benefits in the long run from XRP being successful, from XRP being used, from XRP remaining liquid, and from institutions simply building trust over all these years, or by now, over a decade. I mean, an aggressive sell-off would have exactly the opposite effect. That's why I often consider this argument to be much weaker than it's usually made out to be. So, to be honest, I really don't understand it at all, especially since the numbers are also simply public, as I said, right? Another interesting point. I mean, we have an extremely large number of critics when it comes to XRP, and of course, people are constantly talking and rambling on about Ripple's holdings, often spouting half-baked stuff. At the same time, however, they completely ignore something else, namely that XRP has a fixed upper limit, that is 100 billion XRP. There definitely won't be any more than that. That's set in stone, that's a fact, And this is exactly where the comparison with other networks comes in again, because, I mean, many projects don't even have a comparable limit. Over there, brand new coins are constantly being created, along with new tokens and continuous ongoing inflation. And yet, it's frequently portrayed as though XRP is the much bigger problem. Now, however, we come to Bitcoin, and this is usually where the discussion gets emotional. I mean, many people say Bitcoin will be the new money of the world. You've all probably heard that before. Bitcoin is going to replace every currency now. Bitcoin will eventually dominate everything. To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, as digital gold, sure, you can basically make that argument, but as a global daily world currency, yeah, honestly, that doesn't make any sense to me at all right now.
Mm.
Because then we're suddenly talking about transaction speed, we're talking about high fees, we're talking about taxes, price volatility, and general user friendliness. And that's exactly where things get much, much more complicated than many people can imagine. From my own perspective, I think another scenario is significantly more realistic. My fiat currencies are not going to disappear completely. The euro will stay, the dollar will stay, and other national currencies will also remain. Well, let's see what things look like in 50 years, but for the next 10 years or so, I think that's how it will be. But they'll just become more digital, you know? Stable coins, digital central bank currencies, tokenized assets, digital financial markets. And that's exactly why I also believe that the future will consist of many different interconnected systems, not a single world currency, and certainly not with Bitcoin. So in that respect, it just doesn't make sense. And this is exactly where the actual XRP thesis begins, because I mean, XRP doesn't have to become the new euro, XRP doesn't have to become the new dollar. The more interesting question in this context is rather, can XRP provide liquidity between different systems? Or can XRP become a neutral bridge that is between banks, between countries, between markets? And that's exactly where, for me, the real value lies. Not in paying for a coffee, not in paying for a croissant, but simply in the infrastructure behind it. I mean, if we look at the market right now, we can see exactly this development. More and more attention is flowing, especially into areas like tokenization, settlement, digital assets, and institutional infrastructure. And the narrative is slowly changing bit by bit. It's becoming less and less about which coin will pump tomorrow, and more about which technology is actually being used. And this is exactly where, in my opinion, XRP is getting stronger and stronger, because that's precisely their playing field. And I mean, stablecoins are probably just the beginning. After that will come government bonds, stocks, funds, real estate, derivatives, private markets. Everything is simply becoming increasingly digital, everything is being tokenized, and all these assets simply need infrastructure. That's just a fact. They need liquidity, they need settlement, they need networks. That's exactly why institutions are closely monitoring this area, paying more and more attention to the details, and in some cases, they're increasingly recognizing the potential of XRP. At the same time, of course, we also see the current nervous market, geopolitical risks, uncertainty, and volatility. But I mean, fundamentally, it's still interesting. Still, we're not seeing a complete capitulation in the market right now. So many investors are still staying invested, and many institutions are continuing to build. And that's exactly what distinguishes long-term conviction from short-term speculation. Plus, it's usually right here that the biggest opportunities arise. I mean, the best investments rarely feel completely obvious. I mean, it was exactly the same with Bitcoin in the past. Most people didn't understand it at all. A lot of people just laughed at you because they didn't get it. And I mean, it was only years later that it really became visible to everyone. And with XRP, exactly the same effect could be happening right now. Of course, it's not guaranteed, but it's definitely possible. And that's exactly why you should really focus on all the fundamental data and not just on some headlines. Because what we also shouldn't forget is that XRP is a coin that has been consistently in the top 10 for I don't know how many years. So I think, when was it founded? 13 or something like that. And I mean, there aren't very many cryptocurrencies that have stayed in the top 10 for so long. Here is just a little fun fact. So, if we look ahead into the next 5 to 10 years into the future, for me, the single most critical question is this. What specific kind of infrastructure will actually be needed in the newly digitized financial world? Which networks will actually be used above all? Which assets will be able to provide the essential liquidity? Which platforms will enable settlement? And with precisely these questions, you end up, though it might come as a surprise, at the XRP ledger. But my final conclusion, I mean, clearly the discussion around XRP and its tokenomics is often just far too superficial. I mean, yes, Ripple holds a very significant amount of XRP. Yes, you have to understand that, but the real story is simply much, much bigger. In my opinion, XRP isn't interesting because it might one day become the world currency, but because it could simply play a huge, huge role in the future financial system, as a bridge, as a liquidity layer, as infrastructure. And that's exactly why XRP will continue to be one of the most exciting projects in the entire crypto market for me. Feel free to share your opinion in the comments about what you think of this. How do you see this topic, especially, of course, with regard to the tokenomics? Have you read up on this, and do you think that XRP will be more successful in the long term as a payment network or as a liquidity layer? And finally, just for all the borderline idiots, I'll put the links below again, where everything is clearly listed, including the escrow and so on. Then you can take another look at the structure and read through everything again. It would be good if you have a command of the English language, otherwise you can have it translated as well. But yes, for all the XRP critics who somehow suddenly seem to get arthritis when they are Googling, just take a good look at it. It is definitely doable, and the details are simply listed there once again, at least regarding that specific point. Yes, with that, we're actually already done. It's almost the weekend again too, so I wish you a nice weekend in advance, and we'll definitely talk again on Monday, refreshed as always. Before I go, visit the crypto campus at MonetenDave.com. Or the second domain is cryptoraider24.de. That's the direct site here. If you just want to check out the courses and so on, take a look. I'd really appreciate it. A lot of time has gone into it, and every month it's being expanded with various extras. We're going to keep optimizing a few things as we go along. A website like this isn't finished in just a few months or even half a year, so it's simply ongoing work month after month, year after year. So please feel free to check it out. With that, I'm signing off, and we'll hear from each other on Monday. Keep your chin up and don't let anyone talk you into anything. With that in mind, see you soon. Peace, peace.